Okay. Hello guys. We're Nuggets. I'm Alan, and then my other group mates are John and Lucy. Um, they'll they'll speak later. So Nuggets is a budgeting app for college students that we designed specifically for college students because we think that there's some issues with like current budgeting apps that are not very optimal for college students. And so the issues are that most of them are subscription based. So you're like spending money every month to use something to like manage your money, which is not very ideal, and especially for college students because um, most students don't have a lot of money already. So subscription based is not a very good idea. And then the second one is that a lot of them requires you to enter transaction data manually, and that's just a lot of work. So we decided to let the app do the work. And the third one is that there's usually too much information on the screen, whether it's like numbers or charts or just like a bunch of transactions crumpled up on the screen. It's just like really difficult to read. So we decided to implement a lot of graphics and visualizations. And so to sum it up, Nuggets is a free app designed for college students to manage their money, budget, saving plans, whatever. And it allows you to split fees with friends or group multiple transactions together so that you can see that, for example, if you go to New York and then you're able to put all the transactions that happened in New York together to kind of see like how much you spent. And it also has smart suggestions for recurring transactions, send reminders to people who owe you money, create saving plans based on transaction history, and it doesn't have the problems that I mentioned earlier. And I'm gonna pass it to Lucy to talk about the design prototype.
Okay. Hi, I'm Lucy, and I was mainly in charge of the front end, and here's our prototypes. Um, cool. And this is Alan designed this prototype, and it's we mainly have the um, homepage settings, login page, budget, and expense and savings. And yeah, and this one I designed it. So we have the similar components, but also like I have different tabs. So I integrated these designs and made a user interface diagram using Figma. Yeah, which is listen. Okay. And
And
now I'm going to demonstrate our user interface in Figma.
yeah, so actually, I just ran into some problems with Figma. I don't know why it's not loading right now.
I can
Uh,
share screen.
okay,
Too.
yeah, see if that works.
Cool. Um, so this is our Figma, and oh, sorry. It's a little bit slow somehow. Yeah, and this is our login page. Just type in your user name and password, and then you log in. So this is our home page, and which is the overview of your whether your monthly spending or weekly spending depends on how you um, set your uh, how you customize your homepage. So this pink pie chart is how much you spent, and the green pie chart is how much you save. And here's a pending transaction tab, which is like whenever um, the linked bank account there's a transaction, there will be a pending transaction pop up, so you'll know every transaction saved in your save in Nuggets, and you can edit the information like categories, um, like for example, for VVT, it should be in dining, and so you also can group your transactions. Like if The Dumpling Palace, VVT, and Transaction from Eric are all sent during your trip to downtown Boston. You can save them to the same group so that in future when you view your transactions, they can be in groups. And also can add a note like Eric still owes me $5 something. And then once you save the transactions, they'll be in the all transactions. Yeah, and for the transactions you use using cash or the accounts that are not linked to Nuggets, here's the upload button, so you can upload your own transactions, and the information options will be like similar to the pending transactions. And the second tab in the bottom is budgets and savings. So you can view your budget, which is like how much you can spend and how much you've already spent. If you exceed your amount, it will be red, like alerting you that cannot spend more. And on the top, there is a customize my budget, which is you'll determine your budget cycle, like weekly or monthly. And you can also add items like the item name and budget amount, and you can save it. Wait, I don't know why it's not working, but yeah, I mean, you can save or cancel. And for the saving plan, similar. So you have the like items and the amount, like stocks. If you're not earning anything, it will be red. And the customized page is also similar to the budget page, and you can view your past savings report here. And finally, there's the settings. You can customize like the general, like maybe language, font size or something. And there's also help and feedback, which there'll be a link to our whatever email or something. And accounting security, you can link bank accounts here. Yeah, that's mainly our user interface for now. Thank you.
Okay, let's go back to the presentation. So, all right. And then now John's going to talk about the database structure and how we integrate an API called Plate.
Yes. So I mostly focus on building the database and discussing what functionalities we want to implement in our database. So we started with a discussion. Alan, Lucy, and I talked about what we want in the very beginning, like what are some of the key features of this app. So after that, we made like a Nuggets roadmap, including all those information. Some of them got changed, but most of them we kept, and then we implemented them in our database. Then after that, I built a ERD, entity relationship diagram, that represents what we want for database. And this is what we have so far. And this is subject to change if we want to add more features to the database. But at the moment, this is what we have. So we had some thoughts about which database management system that we're going to use. And it's actually been very interesting. So we started with MongoDB, which is a non-SQL database. It's not relational database. And then there are some benefits and disadvantages to it. Like it can take larger volume, and it has a greater variety and better velocity compared to SQL database. But as we were just about to implement it, Alan and I found some issue with non-SQL database because of security concerns. They're more prone to injection attack, and then since we're dealing with people's budgets and information regarding money and banks, so we treat security very important. So we decided not to use MongoDB. And then we thought about using PostgreSQL, which is a relational database management system. it's actually object relational database management system. So it gives us some flexibilities over how, like, so it gives us some flexibilities that we can inherit objects and tables, so we can extend our functionalities. But it was very weird when it came to Postgres. Um, I So I tried to download it several times on my Mac, and it never worked. Like I probably tried 5 times, and then we reached out to our mentor Ryan, who's a great guy, but we never really figured out how it works. It's almost like a virus on my computer. So after that, we switched to MySQL, which is a database management system that we are more familiar with. And then we eventually implemented our database on MySQL. So after that, we were thinking about how we're going to get how we're going to store and get people's bank information in our database, because it will be very difficult for us to actually implement these features by ourselves. So we found something called the Plate API. And the reason we used it, and we used this API to connect to users' bank account, and then also this is a very reputable API. It's being used by many financial apps like Venmo, Mint, and Acrons. So in the bottom of the PowerPoint, you see there are two images. The left one is a sandbox plate API. It's a database that we can use to test transactions, balance liabilities, and user authentication. And on the right side of and on the right picture, we have a development plate API, which allows us to use very limited data, but at the moment it's good for our app. And if we eventually get more users, we may use a better package. But at the moment, this is good for now. So now it comes to how Plate really works. So um, so the play flow like kind of begins when a user wants to connect to their bank account using the app. So how it works is when the user clicks like makes a request, it creates a link token and then passes to the temporary token to your app's client, and then using this link token uh, in the success callback. We send the temporary public token to your app server, and using that, we can get a permanent access token, which is stored in our database, and then that's how we make, and that's how a user can get the bank information using Plate API. And on the right side of the screen is a photo of some queries for transaction. It's just an example of how Plate is implemented and some of the code of it. But that's it. That's how we're implementing our database and some of the basic information about Plate API. Thank you.
Okay, so now I'm gonna talk about the actual app design um, and the server. So we chose to use React Native because it supports both iOS and Android. It's written in JavaScript. We only have to learn one language, and we'll be able to implement for both frameworks. Plus Node.js and like Express.js, like some other libraries are also JavaScript. So it just makes it really easy for us. So this is the kind of like the app structure or the folder structure for our app. So these are some main folders that I created. For the app folder, I store the API folder, which has all the React components for Played. If there are more APIs in the future, then for other APIs as well. Assets stores images, icons, components stores React components for our app, and containers stores all the screens, all the different login screens, setting screens, activity screens. Library has all the styles and configurations that are used for other JavaScript files. And then database just has the SQL code, doesn't actually have the database itself. Server folder has some files that connect to the Plate API, And in the future, we'll also implement connecting to database. And then the app.js file is where the stack navigators and tab navigators live. So we can manage that and link to all the screens we have. And the reason why we chose Express.js as our server is because it's popular. It has a lot of community support, and it's also JavaScript. It supports REST API, where we can post and get um, like data requests to play it in like our own server. So let me just show kind of how the app looks like currently. So here I started the um, React Native CLI, and then over here is the Express server. And so this is the simulator that shows the app. Just type in. This doesn't really have user authentication right now. I'm just doing some really basic type check in JavaScript, but this is how it's gonna look like. So once you click that, it comes into a home screen, and then it's gonna store all the information, the transaction details. It's gonna have a setting screen. You can set your notifications or accounts, add accounts, or some other stuff. This is just kind of to help us practice stack navigators. And then this is the page where we were trying to implement Plaid, and I'll just show how it works. So once you click that button, uh, our our Express server makes a request to the Plaid API, and it pops up this screen, which we can navigate through. So say we want to connect to Bank of America, we'll type in username and password. This username and password is from the Plaid API itself, from the sandbox that they provided. But in the future, we can test with real data. And so on success, it will pass back an access token right here, where this will be stored in the database, also with an item ID, which I think associates with the bank, so with Bank of America. And so with information, you can get all the transaction details and basically all the information you need from this user's bank account, and then we'll implement it here. So that's how the app looks like. And this is just a checklist for what we're gonna do in the future. So we're gonna finish implementing all the React components and material design, connect to the Amazon AWS MySQL server, or I mean database, finish the user authentication, implement our dark mode, and optimize for Android and advertising if we're launching to like App Store or etc. And we were also thinking about using Redux state management, which means like which is something that you use to store variables across the entire app. Because currently we're passing some variables around different files, and it's kind of messy. But this is just some things that we're thinking. And that's it. That's our app nuggets. Thank you, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. That was an incredible presentation, incredible project. Super excited to see both of the organizational stuff, kind of like getting some more insight into how you design and organize your app, and also love seeing the final product that you actually have a working prototype. That's awesome. So great job, everyone on the Nuggets team. I would ask for a round of applause, but it doesn't really work virtually. But great job again. I will, actually, I'm not going to reshare the lineup, but I'm just going to call on the next group, which is group number 2, or the grocery list generator application group. So if one of you could go ahead and share your screen. I also want to note here that we should try to kind of keep these presentations below 10 minutes because I don't want to run out of time. And I do want everyone to be able to present. So while that was a great presentation, it was a little on the longer side. So definitely just try to keep things below 10 minutes if you can. Cool. So someone from grocery list generator can go ahead and share screen. I will turn it over to them.
Hi guys. So we're a grocery list generator, and what we sought out to do is to create a better shopping list. So I'll start with introductions. I'm Karen.
I'm Alex.
I'm Roseanne.
I'm Preeti.
And so moving on to the next slide. So while we were brainstorming, the biggest issue that we found with grocery lists is that they're not the most easy thing to make. And when you look up a recipe, you're usually going to look it up on some sort of cooking website. And what comes up is a lot of pictures, a lot of ads, and a lot of instruction details that you have to scroll through. So we sought out to find a better way. Our solution was an ingredients web scraper. So the idea of our project was that you input a link to a recipe and our website will output what ingredients you need and give you your shopping list.
So basically how we approached this was step one, we decided to create a web scraper. So we used the Beautiful Soup library and Python, we learned how to like web scrape. And then we had to adjust our list so it looked more like a shopping list rather than just a whole, like a large string list of ingredients. And then we're currently working on creating the website design. So we're using Flask and we are creating a web page to, our web page is like store all of our information. So some of the issues we ran into, so the first one was that we weren't able to web scrape the entire the entire ingredients list. So what would happen was we'd end up getting like, so in the example you can see for cake, there would be two sections. So we would be able to get the first part, but we weren't able to get the second part. So so that means we had to like adjust our code to get both of the ingredients sections.
So another issue we ran into was basically parsing the string to store like the amount and the actual ingredient. So this would be like what our ingredients would look like after we took it from the web scraper. And we had to like separate what the measurement was and what the ingredient was. And this was difficult sometimes because it wasn't as straightforward as there was always like a measurement or always a number. And then we wanted to store that in a dictionary. Yeah, so our dictionary is called measurements, and the ingredient would be the key, and and then it would like link to an amount. And we did this so if a user were to input like two different recipes and both of them like called for butter, for example, we could add it up and so they would like know the total amount of butter they would need. And this is just like an example of what our dictionary looked like at the end. This is like a brownie recipe. So now we have like a demo of our web scraper and like what the front end also looks like. Yeah, so the user would input a URL and basically just like generates the list of ingredients and the measurements in a bulleted list.
So going forward, there's more functionality we want to add. So first, we want to be able to save the list, probably in like an account. So that way you'll be able to edit your current list and change it up. And that's basically the functionality we're working on. And then also improve the design.
So for a design perspective, we made two different mockups. The first one was for a desktop mockup on a computer. And this would allow us to have the functionality of keeping track of the list of ingredients you currently have in one column. And then another part where you could add an ingredient, add an entire list of ingredients by entering the URL. And then afterwards, you could choose which ingredients from a website you would want to add to your personal list. And then we did another mockup for mobile devices. And this one comes with a dark and light mode, but this is the light mode. Yeah.
And we just want to give a special shout out to our mentor, Ryan, who helped us through this entire thing, and also to all the Oasis coordinators. Thank you.
Well, I'm of course biased, but that was incredible. I love to see all the work that you guys have been doing throughout the semester kind of come to fruition in terms of a demo and also just presenting all the beautiful mock-ups and designs and web scraping stuff you guys did. Incredible. Super excited for that. That was amazing. Great, but I do want to keep things moving here, given that we want to get all the groups in. So we are going to jump next to Luma. And if anyone has any questions for the last group in the meantime, just feel free to send them into the Zoom chat. But for now, if someone from Luma could go and present, that would be amazing.
Hi, we are Team Luma. I'm sharing my screen. And okay. And oops. Okay. Jess, you want to start? Yeah. Okay, sorry.
Hi guys, we're Luma. The team consists of Jamie, Rachel, Trevor, Spencer, and Mal. So Luma is an inclusive platform for musicians, singers, songwriters, and producers to network with each other through online portfolios and online chatting options.
So this is a continuation of last semester's project. We had come up with like a design last semester. So we wanted to have a homepage, login page, connections page, and profile page. And the most amazing thing about this semester was that we actually got to write our code out. And so if you guys follow the link, you guys can actually go to this link, but this is what it looks like. So this is our homepage, and our homepage is where you can like look for other musicians that you want. Clearly right now, this is just filler information. But like if you are a singer or a songwriter and you're looking for other musicians, you're supposed to be able to go through these tabs and be able to look for like singers to sing your song. Or if you want to start a band, you can look for songwriters to write your music or other musicians. We have this key feature that Jess worked on, which is meant to like filter the amount of people. So on your feed, you can like filter out different types of people. We also have our connections page. So once you decide, also look how cool these like little React things are. Trevor had put in a lot of work to make it look really cool. But we had a connections page. So once you favorited like, oh, I love listening to Ryan Drew, like play piano on whatever, you could like add him to your connections. And we also had a profile page where you can, this would be like your own profile page, but if you're going onto the profile of other people and just reaching out and networking, you could gather their contact information here. Rachel and I worked on this page. Rachel did most of it. She did all of the designs too. Shout out to how amazing Rachel is. And we also have this amazing login page that Trevor put together, which you can actually write in like all of your information. And you can also, it links us to other pages, which is really cool. And that is our deployed page. Okay.
Okay, so some of our accomplishments included completing our front end and using Next.js, and we actually spent a couple of weeks in the beginning trying to determine which language and what kind of framework we would use. And we spent a couple weeks after that trying to get used to the framework and learn React. And a lot of us don't have web development experience, so we learned from scratch, and we completed the front end, which we're really proud of. And we also, a lot of us also didn't have GitHub experience, so we learned how to manage the branches and pushing and pulling and like doing source control on GitHub. And we also were able to implement a variety of imports for specific features that we would want to include on our website, and which required watching a lot of tutorials and just research in general. And we also started an Instagram page, which will be linked at the end of the presentation, where we're documenting our progress and team building. Yeah.
Right, and then some takeaways that we had from this project is like, as Rachel said, we all started last semester with very little or no experience. And I think we're all really grateful to have gone through this experience together, because we're all getting to that point where we're past that initial hump of getting started and that feeling of being overwhelmed with everything to learn. And now we know we're capable and we can do it. And it's just about putting in the work to get it done.
Okay, so for the next steps we have, so as great as the our like little prototype of our front end is, there's obviously a lot that we can work on improving. So we're gonna want to continue working on adding features to the site, and then of course we have all of the back end to learn and implement. So we're gonna have to figure out how to manage user data and like logins and all that. And overall, we just need to just spend more time to get better at what we're doing, like just learn more about how to develop, like how to do web development, basically.
And these are some pictures of us just having fun. There's our Instagram page. So if any of you have Instagram, you can like look us up and you can learn more about us. Spencer's in the left photo. He wasn't here today. He's actually busy right now, but he also is a huge part of our group. And yeah, that's a little bit. Yes, we did a lot of fun weekly gatherings. So shout out to Ashlyn, our amazing mentor, for making all of this happen. She was there to emotionally support us and to just be amazing. So we couldn't have done it without her. Also, shout out to everyone in our team. I'm so proud of everyone. We're also proud of each other, and it was just an amazing experience. So thanks, guys. And yeah. Oh, and also shout out to Oasis for letting us do this. Like, this is so cool. Okay, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Luma team. I super enjoyed seeing this project last semester, and my enjoyment has only increased since then. And I'm super excited to see what this project becomes. I just dropped a follow on the Instagram page, so I'm expecting more content there for sure. Cool. So the next group that we are going to get into is Connect Work. Yeah, so without further ado, I will turn it over to Connect Work.
All right. Second. Present. Can you guys see that? Give it a second. Okay, so I'm Jan. I'm a first-year CS major, and my partners are Kenny and Anna. You want to introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Anna. I'm also a first-year CS major.
I'm Kai. I'm also first year CS and math. Yeah.
All right, so we came into Oasis and we didn't really have any like concrete idea, any of us, of what we wanted to do. So we started off with just initial brainstorming. We came up with a list of ideas, which you can see here. I won't go too in depth with it, but we just had a wide range of ideas and we kind of narrowed it down to top choices. And we ended up choosing to make a platform to help people meet and network, because we noticed that especially during the past year with COVID and everything, networking and things like that has become tougher. So we want to create a somewhat of a less formal version of LinkedIn to help people to network easier. So here you can see we kind of laid out the final idea, the things we're going to need to implement, such as users for students and employers, as well as professors. And then what type of data we need to store, what type of technology we plan on using, which we planned on using React Native and Node and Express at first. And then some key functions that we want to do, simple things such as just creating an account or logging in and registering a new account, to more complicated things that we knew we probably wouldn't be able to get to, such as like being able to post like a picture, being able to add comments to other people, or things like that. So we wanted to kind of get the whole range of functionality, and then based off of that, we prioritized. So then after that, we kind of want to draw out our idea. So we ended up using Figma to kind of draw out the general framework that we wanted to use and the general user interface. And when we were doing that, we decided to just generally focus on simplicity and trying to make the user interaction and navigation as simple as possible, because ultimately it is an app that is focused on connecting people and you don't want it to be overly complex. So you can see the general Figma design that we had on the right. And along with that, we also began to prioritize certain features, because some certain features are very key. For example, you need to be able to create a user to be able to load that user's info or to be able to friend different users. So as you can see in the square that we had, those are kind of like the key functionality that we wanted to focus on implementing first. And we kind of had a listed out an order of in which we can do things based off of that.
So moving on to front end, we decided to use React Native because we wanted to build this on a mobile app first. And we first focused on our priority screens, which are our login, sign-in, home screens, and profiles. And we split this up among the three of us. And on these screens, some of the features that we focused on are like the drop-down menu, drawer navigation, and dark mode, which Kenny really wanted. Moving on, here are some examples of our pages. So our login screen would have our logo and have them be able to put in their email and password. We also linked Google, LinkedIn, or GitHub as other ways of signing in. And then we made an example of our homepage with Ben Lerner as a placeholder for posts. And on the posts, we were thinking of having people be able to specify what exactly they were looking for, and other people would be able to reply to that. We also had like a search bar, and on the very right, that's an example of our sign up student page where there are like drop-down menus for like university and graduation year. Moving on, these are just some other examples of pages we created if you want to sign up as a company or as like a student. Specifically, the students could also put in what they were looking for. For example, like interview practice or like coding and like study groups, while companies could write down what they specifically wanted to.
Okay, so for our backend, we considered two main options. One was setting up a node server with a Mongo database, and the other was using Firebase. We originally went with the first option because they're like used more widely by the industry, and they're like just more resources that we can look at. But then like we realized in the middle that Firebase is a lot easier to set up and implement. So we ultimately chose to use that instead, just so that the setup process is less time consuming and like we could focus on like the other parts of the project more. And using Firebase, we were able to set up an authentication system so that users can sign up and log in, and also like have a database that can like permanently store users' data and retrieve them. So on the left side is for authentication, where every user has their like own unique email and like user ID that like Firebase uses to make sure that everyone like gives the correct like email and password when they log in. On the right side is like we have something called Firestore that actually like stores the user's data, like their name, like what school they go to, like in their graduation year. For now, like that's all we have, but like we're planning on like expanding this in the future so that users can like save more information, like profile pictures or posts maybe. Yeah, so that's it on like the app itself. And as for some of the challenges we came across, like we didn't have any like ideas coming in, so we had to like spend a few weeks just like brainstorming ideas and narrowing them down. And also like since we didn't have any like prior experience with any of the technologies we used for this project, we spent like most of our times like just researching and didn't have as much time to like actually work on the project than we would have liked. And there were also like a few cases where we tried doing something like using Node and Redux, but then like realized halfway that it's either like out of our reach or too time consuming. And like we had to like look for alternatives. So in the future, like we're trying to add like a few more features to this project, like being able to like DM other users, like writing posts and like hosting events. And also like maybe like come up with a slightly more user-friendly design and like just better user interface in general, I guess, because like that wasn't like our priority this semester. So overall, like we thought that this project was a good intro to like mobile dev because like again, like we didn't have like much experience coming in. So we definitely like learned a lot like about mobile dev by working on this project, like especially like on the React Native side, which is really similar to React. And we also used a lot more version control for this project, which like I guess is always good. And lastly, like we weren't able to implement everything we wanted. Like we had to like leave off a few features, but like our focus this semester for this was like mostly like looking into different technologies and like choosing which ones we like the best. So this project was more like a side product of us like applying, like researching and like applying what we've learned throughout the semester. So like just like put it more emphasis on like the actual like learning process. Yeah.
Awesome. Is that all you guys have?
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that group. Honestly, I love seeing groups like this where the students learn like a ridiculous amount because this is like 3 first-year students with no prior experience in the tech that they used, and they have like you saw, prototype in the with Ben Learner Space and everything in the presentation, which is just amazing to see. I had no idea what React Native was in my freshman year, so these students are already far ahead of where I was. So amazing project, amazing job, awesome presentation. This is one of my groups, so I'm biased again, but I absolutely love it. Thank you, ConnectWork. The next group that we're going to show off is Mullet. So could somebody from Mullet go ahead and share screen here?
We're gonna skip that presentation. They don't want to go anymore.
Oh, yep, okay, sounds great. In that case, we're going to move right on to group 12, which I'm not sure has a second name, but if they do, they can introduce it now. Yeah, let's get group 12 in here.
Hello, my name is Lucas Charbonnet, and the project that I've been working on this semester is called Let's Draw. Let me screen share. Okay. So the premise of this is an anonymous drawing canvas where you can get paired with like other random people, and then you have some limited amount of time to doodle on the same canvas together. So the main like inspiration to this has been like a lot of this past year and like my personal struggle with creativity. I've been facing a lot of burnout, and especially now it's been like quite difficult to feel inspired. So for both like experienced artists and like new artists just like facing a lot of anxiety with creating, I wanted to create a project where like they could feel safe in doing so. I really just like wanted to shift away from the way that social media tackles creativity and to instead just like cultivate an environment where people feel like casual and that they're having fun. A lot of the precedents to this project involved were much more fully featured, and an example of this is Aggie.io. It's really cool program and was my main inspiration, but I found that I still felt pressure to perform instead of just having fun, just because of how fully featured it was. My first prototype was highly stripped down. It was just a canvas with option to choose some colors in the chat window on the side. I started tackling the way that people interacted with each other while using this app differently, and instead moved the chat towards a pin system, and also added layer support for both a line layer and color layer, which, unlike the Aggie.io where you have as many layers as you want, I just wanted 2 in order for people not to feel as overwhelmed, and a limited color palette. I was nearing completion with this prototype, but there were still some aesthetic things that I wanted to change, mostly regarding the chat window and that the buttons weren't super clear. So I relabeled them to actual line layer, color layer, and then either show pins or hide pins, and modified the opacity of the chat window and completely redesigned it so that it's less heavy on the screen. And then finally, I have this user experience, which I would rather just do in XD itself, so I could walk through it. You start on this main page, and then you can click the start button, begin queuing with others, and then you're loaded into your own canvas with a few other people. You can begin drawing on this line layer and create your own doodles, and then switch to the color layer, and then begin coloring in, which is under the line layer, making it a lot easier, and you don't have to worry about coloring in the lines. You can sort of go under them. Here's the rest of the drawings. And then from here, you can continue to choose between line layer and color layer, and interact with others' drawings through creating pins, which creates this intimate chat window and you can create these pins pretty much anywhere. But these were the only ones I had for the prototype. And you can also hide these pins, and eventually, if you want to leave early, you can leave. Otherwise, it would take you to some ending screen where you can save your canvas. And then, oops. Oh, for future work and iteration, I would love for the prototype to better imply that you can, that there are multiple people drawing at the same time. I found that really hard to convincingly make some sort of video to do that, but I'm sure you could do that with video editing. And I would also love to eventually start implementing this in a later semester with the help of Oasis. That would be super cool. Thank you for listening. That's all I have.
Wow, thank you so much. That was, I mean, I am sold. If this goes on the App Store eventually, I will download it the first day that it comes out, because it looks like so much fun, so relaxing, and joyful. I don't know, I'm so excited about that. And I love seeing the progress and iteration on the designs as well, because I think it really shows that you can use Oasis not just to actually make an app, but to think of an app and iterate on your design for the app as well, and get something that looks this good, because that is amazing. Great, so we can get right into the next group here, and that group is going to be Atlas. So go ahead, Atlas.
All right, sounds good. I will just share my screen here. All right, hopefully you guys can see it. So you guys heard about us last week a little bit in our work from last semester. So now we are going to be just kind of going over what we did this semester. So I'm Matt, as I already said, and then I'll let, I guess, my other group members here introduce themselves. I don't think Dustin and Levi are in here, but at least I know Dennis is here, so he can go introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Dennis. I'm a third-year CS and math student, and I am also working on Atlas.
Yeah, so I also think I forgot to mention, but I'm a second-year CS and design student as well. So a quick reminder about what Project Atlas is, and it is a VS Code extension to help visualize design patterns in code and specifically see where code implementations are used throughout Java projects. We started with Java because its object-oriented nature allows us to really easily see dependencies between really how it works and like how different files communicate with each other. Now our backend is written in Java, utilizing the Java parsing library and the Jackson library for parsing our Java project, and then serializing that information into a JSON format respectively. And meanwhile, our front end is written in TypeScript, which I don't know much about, but luckily I have Dennis, who will be discussing that a little later on. So last semester, we got a lot of work done, including really setting up a really strong foundation of what we wanted Project Atlas to be. Along with that, we started writing our backend code, learning about the Java parser library and setting that up in a basic way that will serialize and parse a Java project into JSON format. And on top of that, we also created a basic extension that could read and that could take JSON information and then convert it to a basic visualization. There were a few caveats to this in that our information and that JSON generated by our backend code could not be dynamically read through our front end. So we know we wanted to address that initially. And on top of that, our visualization that code was very messy while it worked. And we didn't really know what we wanted the visualization to be. It wasn't really set in stone yet. We just really were sketching around and had some ideas. And on top of that, there were also a lot of bugs that you can expect from an early software project. So we knew that we had a strong foundation exiting last semester, and that we could really use that to get a lot done this semester. So as we kind of researched and as I was reaching out to people to learn more about information design, I learned that an area of code visualization and code dependencies isn't new. Is that people have tried it before, but that doesn't really mean that it's easy. So I came across something called Frappe, which is a project at Oracle Labs, which serves to really do a lot of the things that Atlas serves to do also. And I even reached out to the lead PI for Frappe, David Maibush, I think I'm pronouncing that wrong, and had a couple emails with him, getting some of his tips and advice when it comes to visualizing a code base. And one thing that he mentioned that really stuck with me was that a lot of people, when they're reading code and when they understand code, they have their own mental model of it. So when you create a visualization for it, it might have certain biases or go against what someone thinks of what someone thinks that the visual of how a code base works. And so it makes that visualization harder to use. So I just found that kind of fact really interesting. Now, I also spoke to some fantastic designers about information design in general, because even though half my degree is design, I haven't done much with visualizations and data visualizations yet. So I spoke with Kate Tirado and Daryl Smith, a couple of my past professors, and I also spoke to Dan Gaidula, who's a friend of Daryl's, and he really gave me a lot of insight when it comes to UX and UI design, and really just got a lot of great ideas from him. So I went back to the drawing board and really thought, okay, how can we create a good visualization that both can look good and be really useful for someone that doesn't know much about a project, but still also provide a lot of useful information. And so the idea here with Project Atlas is, as you zoom out on a project, this visualization, it'll get more and more abstract, where you can see more abstract design patterns. On the flip side, as you zoom more in, it'll get more concrete and you can see the actual code implementations. So we start off with our directory view, which is kind of a basic chord visualization, where you'll see the different directories and how they interact with each other with different arrows representing at different widths, representing kind of like how many different references and external references there are. As you zoom in, you'll see an initial network or initial graph visualization of how all these different files interact with each other, with files that have a higher betweenness centrality, if you remember that from your algo classes, or if you have files that are used more or referenced more, they'll be closer to the center. So you can easily see that visually. Then you can zoom even further in and really see all the different references and connections that a single file has, and really look at those specific code implementations to really see how it works. And now a lot of this is, of course, implementing all this might serve to be more of a challenge, but time will tell. And on top of that, this kind of view really gives us a strong foundation to add in a lot of future features should we want to, or make this more useful as well. So then I'll pass it off to Dennis here, where he can really kind of discuss our front end, what it was like last semester, and what we did to improve it this semester.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Yeah, so as Matt kind of mentioned earlier, where we left off last semester, we had like, a strong foundation for where we wanted, I guess, like the project to grow and evolve in. But the front end was kind of jank. As you can see here, there is these random kind of green lines that are supposed to be pointing between lines of code and different files, except they're not aligned properly. Overall, the UX just wasn't great. There's this giant ugly button in the top right corner, and yeah, it wasn't pleasant to look at. So if we go to the next slide. Yeah. So, and here is kind of what the code looks like. So I'll talk about this right image first. So looks readable, right? No, not at all. Yeah, so this is just like screenshot I took here was basically our entire like HTML file. And the reason it looks like this is because we were creating a VS Code extension, and VS Code, the way if you want to display some kind of like custom created like content, you write it essentially something called a web view, which is just an HTML file or string. And so that actually meant like we needed to dynamically kind of generate this string that contains all the HTML and all the visualization and SVG stuff that we wanted. But also because it's all in a string, we didn't get any of the benefits of like syntax highlighting, code completion. We weren't even really sure how to like dynamically inject styles, and everything just went into this one giant string that was really, really difficult to work with. There were a few workarounds we came up with. So if you look on the left here, we did come up with like these functions to dynamically inject like certain SVGs and certain scripts. But the problem with these is that they were just being read from like the file system. And so we were taking these like files, reading their entire contents, then copying and appending them to this HTML string, and the whole process was just super slow, super fragile, and again, just not a great like user experience or a developer experience. So if we go to the next slide. So how did we solve this? Well, we basically started over. We decided to essentially rewrite the entire front end using React. And what was challenging about this was that it was not entirely clear how we even hook up React to this VS Code extension. Because most times when you're creating like a React project, you would like to use something like Create React App or Next.js, which have their own like CLI tools to generate a project. But VS Code like extensions, they just don't work like that. Like you need to provide an HTML string at the end of the day, and the question was like, how do we do that? So after several weeks of research and trial and error, we finally figured it out. And then we just started the process of rewriting the whole front end with React. So where is it now? To be honest, not much further than we were. We only got to a point where we got basically the same point where we were last semester. As you can see, we have these like boxes where you can see the code. The green lines are kind of missing, but in general, I think we cleaned up the UI a bit. We have this like top bar here with some buttons that trigger different functionality. But overall, I think the biggest improvement that we made is that it's just so much easier to work with now because we have syntax highlighting, we have code completion, we have components as well. Like before, each of these boxes was just like an SVG tag that we had to like write manually. But no, now we're like leveraging the full power of React and having a state and making updates to states. And if we go to the next slide, and this is kind of what the code looks like now. So on the left, you see here we actually have JSX, and to me this just feels a lot cleaner to work with than just a giant green string. And on the right here, this is actually our entire HTML file now. We still had to include some of the things like the HTML tag, the head tag, and the body tag. But the most important part is like all we need to do in terms of like the JavaScript is inject this script, essentially URL or URI, and it when the page loads, when the extension loads, it dynamically generates the rest of the HTML for us. So yeah, personally it looks a lot cleaner. It's a lot easier to work with. And we also got some pretty serious performance improvements. So the entire scripting process was not faster because now we have like this extra library that we're using, but the process of loading, painting, and rendering was, I think, almost like a 10. I measured it was almost like a 10 times increase, because React itself is super optimized and knows how to basically knows how to update the page better than you probably do. So we got also a significant just performance improvement from switching to React. And then what do we have? What's the next slide?
Yeah, I think I can.
Yeah.
So when Dennis says that we rewrote the full front end, it's more of that he rewrote it. So really, like, if Dennis was not on Project Atlas, I really don't know what we'd be doing, because he's done a lot of great stuff with TypeScript, because I don't know any TypeScript at all, or very basics. But over the past 8 weeks or so for a quick little TLDR, we've, as Dennis said, we rewrote our front end. So we're working with that and creating our actual visualization now just from sketches will hopefully be a lot easier. We've utilized GitHub a lot more, actually taking advantage of GitHub projects, issues, and pull requests, overall having a more professional feeling project, and really taking some of the experience we have with Git to another level. And where now Project Atlas feels more than just a simple small little project. It feels, again, as I said, more professional. We figured out a slightly cleaner visualization, how we want that to work, and now it's about implementing it. And we've also begun to we wrote some documentation in READMEs. We had some discussions about refactoring our backend, allowing it to have more information for our front-end aspect to use to create a better visualization. And of course, we've created a logo and a little bit of a visual language around Project Atlas too, which I think I spent like a week doing because I felt like it. So overall, a lot of great work was done in the past 8 weeks, and I'm really excited to see what will happen in the future here, because there's still a lot of work to be done. Now that we have a better front end, we can work to begin to implement our actual visualization and to make that more usable. As I touched upon in the last slide, there's also refactoring aspects of our backend to provide more information in our JSON serialization. And we do need to write tests. And as a former Fundies TA, some professors may not be happy with me, so I apologize, but we will get to that at some point. And overall, we're going to be continuing to make Project Atlas a more useful and functional tool, because I think it has a lot of potential in terms of how it can help people, and also because I think it's super interesting. And as I'm super passionate about it, hopefully Dennis is too. And he stuck around for this long, so I hope he is. And so there's so much work yet to do, and yet we've also done so much as well. I hope Project Atlas, we can always use more developers. Will always be more issues coming up. And so if you want to help, check out our GitHub page and really just start working on some issues or writing some comments or doing stuff with it, because more developers means more work can get done and we can find more bugs and issues. I also want to give a shout out to our mentor, Ryan, who has been there kind of, when we had questions, and has overall been a great help and with a lot of support through Project Atlas. So that's us. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so. Oh, sorry, Dennis, you have something to say?
I was just saying thank you.
Oh, well, thank you guys. That was, again, an amazing presentation. There's not much more that I can say about the presentations, but I do really want to call out that I love how you are continuing using Oasis to learn and grow your skill set. For those of you who have never taken a project from like its early stages to kind of this more professional stage where you're refactoring stuff so you can actually continue doing work at the same pace in the future, it requires a totally different skill set. And it's really impressive that Project Atlas team has kind of used Oasis to develop that skill set and put it to work in terms of totally upgrading the UX and totally refactoring the front end to use a better framework. Super impressive stuff, really exciting to see. And I am, of course, incredibly excited for the future of this project. Yeah, so amazing work, guys. The next project we're going to show off is the ResMail scheduler, which I don't have a group number for, but does someone from the ResMail scheduler want to share their screen?
I can share my screen.
Awesome.
Okay.
Okay, so we are ResMail Scheduler. We originally started as a group for first year seminar as we're all Curry students, and we got put in a group together. We had to come up with an idea for the design thinking project. And so what we did is we initially had to, we had to give a take a survey students that we knew about issues they had on campus or off campus. For example, I was off campus, so I would not have been giving the same responses as other students off campus. So we gave out a survey to mostly Corey first year students because like that's who we knew. We didn't really have much networking, and so we just asked our friends, people in our classes, and then they responded with their biggest issues, which for the most part was ResMail. Especially for those on campus, that was the biggest issue, and it was definitely a shared sentiment among our group members. So we decided we wanted to tackle that as opposed to other issues because at one point or another, we're all probably going to be on campus, even if we're off campus first semester. Like I'm on campus this semester, and ResMail is something that everyone's going to experience while on campus. So here were some of the issues they had. It was a long wait time, unidentified packages. I know my friend a few weeks ago never got an email that their package arrived, and they had to go in person and like spend a lot of time figuring out what happened to it. Eventually they got it, but the communication from ResMail is not ideal. And then their delivery times and the schedule in general was also just complicated because they spontaneously change what days they are open. They haven't been doing that as much recently, but they did that quite a bit like a few months ago. So we took that into account, and the next slide has just the overall responses. We don't need to spend too much time on that, but like we got enough to where we could circulate our idea of tackling ResMail. So then we went on to how we would solve this issue.
So after our user research, we concluded that we wanted to do something with ResMail. So we came up with the question of how might we design a solution which reduces ResMail congestion and strain on employees while also delivering timely and detailed information to students. So we had to come up with a way to effectively accomplish this goal. So we started brainstorming, and we wanted to keep some things in mind when brainstorming. So the people who'd be using our platform, which was Northeastern students and faculty who received mail on campus. And then we had to keep in mind what they wanted out of it. So they wanted better up-to-date information about packages. And then we also had to keep other things in mind, such as keeping ResMail staff involved with the process instead of using the service to update information, and also making sure it actually accomplishes our goal of avoiding congestion at ResMail locations and providing the correct information. So we had many ideas about how to go to this. My personal favorite was pigeon carriers, but we eventually combined 3 of our main ones that we came up with, which was text messages that notify you when your package arrives, a database that logs every package and is available to users, and a package pickup scheduler. And so we ended up combining these for ResMail package pickup scheduler. So we were pretty influenced by the current COVID test scheduler, which was helpful in many ways because it would help logistically when designing our website. So we have something to go off of, but also be like familiar to students and staff here who are already used to that and would have an easy time getting to learn it. We wanted to reduce wait times, but limiting the number of people who are picking up their package. So similar how it currently works for COVID scheduling. You'd choose a time and then you'd go then. So then it would sort of spread out when people are going. And then it'll also reduce stress on workers because they could not be just hit by waves of people coming in when they might be like understaffed at the moment, and they could properly predict when people would be coming and prepare for that. So we took this idea to ResMail staffers over on Columbus, and we got very positive feedback from them. So we knew we're on the right track. We also talked with many students about it, just in our like friend groups and stuff, and they all thought it was a good idea. So it really helped us, encourage us with going forwards with this plan.
So when we went about designing it, we wanted to make it so you can go from your mailing from My Northeastern. If you had a package, you'd be able to schedule an appointment by selecting the time slot. And very similar to the COVID test scheduler, just choose a time slot based off availability and book it. And then you just get your details and a reminder. So when we initially went about doing this, we considered a lot of different platforms, such as Microsoft SharePoint and HostGator, and making a website with JavaScript. So for the first half of Oasis, we were really trying to use Microsoft SharePoint because it would be very similar to the COVID test scheduler, so everyone would already be familiar with it. But after the initial test build failed and it was extremely difficult to learn and the service was not user-friendly, we had downloaded a bunch of different versions of SharePoint, none of which were working. It was hard to run a server on our own computers, so it just really wasn't working out. We looked into HostGator, either with SharePoint to like host it or to make it by itself the scheduler, but it cost money and important files were initially inaccessible, so we decided to just do it ourselves and just use HostGator to host the website and program it ourselves. So we thought we should use a SQL database in PHP. So we used XAMPP as web stack to create the SQL database. So when we were initially deciding what we should use, we researched SQL versus NoSQL solutions. We ended up going with SQL. So we used PHP MyAdmin to create the structure. We used Atom to create scripts to manipulate the database, and we wanted to update our database when a user selected their appointment time, and we wanted to use scripts to reset the database for each week. So we wanted to store basically this data for each like time slot. So this would be an example data structure for the Columbus ResMail pickup location. So for each I guess part of the data structure, we wanted to store an ID, which would be a unique ID slot for each time. As there's only 6 days of the week, we wanted to also store the day, the time. We wanted to say whether or not the time slot was full, an actual list of students registered for the time slot, and the amount of students registered for the time slot. So, for example, we could use the current amount of students registered to determine how full it is, information like that. So currently we still need to finish the website as well as the scheduling system with JavaScript and the database with XAMPP. we really were trying to use SharePoint for the first half, so we were trying to learn that. But because that ended up not really what we were using, we think our project will take a bit more time to complete. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was awesome. And I really love that you decided that you would use the wrong technology and pivoted like in the middle of the semester instead of trying to push through with the tech that just wouldn't work for you. That's a really like important decision to be able to make. Also a very hard one to be able to make when you have already put a ton of work in with a specific technology. And I'm sure that other people in the audience can learn from an experience like that. So I really appreciate sharing that one. That was amazing.
Thank you.
Awesome. So the next group that we have in our lineup is group 6, I believe. There are 3 groups left. Do we have someone from group 6 here? Any group 6ers?
Let me check really quick.
Cool.
We can circle back to them if they come in later.
Yeah, sounds good. Group 11, are we ready to go? Does someone from group 11 want to present?
Am I audible?
Yeah, group 11?
Yep. You're ready.
Awesome. Go. Oh, I muted myself, but go right ahead.
Can you give us like 1 second? I just got the presentation.
Yeah, no worries. Also, is there any way you could like move closer to your mic? Maybe it's kind of tough for me to hear you. I don't know if anyone else is having that experience too.
Am I audible now?
A little bit. It's still a little quiet. I don't know.
I'm not sure what I can do about my microphone though.
No worries. Yeah, it's audible. Definitely audible. You're good to go.
Yep. I can share my screen.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So our project is called To Be Done, and the group consists of me, Justin, and Satvik. So the biggest issue that we have is that I don't ever check my to-do list. It's either in some like random app or that it doesn't ever remind me to like update my to-do list. So I end up like always forgetting to make the list or do something. So for that, we were just making a cute app called To Be Done, which is like more urgent than to do, which is like a web extension that displays your items on the web browser itself instead of like being hidden in some app. And yeah, so Satvik can talk about planning and we can go forward.
Hi guys. So we're gonna present our demo now. I can't really hear you, Bhavesh, so I'm gonna assume you meant to do a demo. I'm just gonna share my screen real quick. Do you mind if I share? Oh, thank you. Okay, give me a sec. Okay. So the thing is, because we couldn't really meet for the first couple meetings and like we're just kind of disorganized, we haven't really worked much on our actual demo, our product, but like basically we kind of have like a rough game plan, like an MVP, and we kind of know what we're gonna do in like the future, especially in the summer. So we have so far, mostly due to Justin, thank him definitely, but like we have this little mini to-do list. It's in like a Chrome extension, right? You have a couple tasks, you can just click on them, add item, check the completed items. They don't really work right now, but like our plan is to expand on this and eventually add like alerts, like both audio and visual. Actually, one of the apps I've been using lately a lot is it's called Pomo Focus. It's like a Pomodoro timer, and I noticed that one of the key things that thing has is it has like a sort of like a bell, like an alarm every time your break is over. So we want to add something like that where we're just notifying the user that it's time to get to this task, or maybe even add a Pomodoro timer to it, because I feel like, as Bhavesh said, right, it's so hard to like pay attention to a to-do list that's in another app or just not easily accessible. Just something inside Chrome would just be a lot more a lot easier to use. So yeah, that's our demo.
Apart from the demo, I also had like the UI set up for the app. So we first planned and then we decided on some UI and we were trying to build it as a prototype. And all right, so when we click the button, we get something like that. And a workflow would be clicking the items to complete the list. And another workflow would be adding a new item, which gets you to that. And you can also visit a website with more features that we plan to add in the future. Yeah, so we wanted to complete our prototype, hopefully sync it with Microsoft and Google to-do lists so that it's easier. And that's about it. Thank you. A huge shout out to Arvind, who's our mentor, who helped us with every step of the way, Olivia, and the whole Oasis team.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I love the to be done idea. I know a lot of people, myself included, have problems with working through their to-do lists as actively as they want to. So definitely would be awesome to have that kind of like in my browser telling me that I actually need to get these things done all the time. And also really excited to see the kind of progress that you made, even not being able to meet that much for the first couple of meetings. Awesome that you still were able to work through the ideation process and get a prototype working. Really impressive stuff. Great job, guys. Great. So the next group, I don't know if group 6 is around, but we're going to go right to Note Taker, which is the last group that we have scheduled for today. So if group 6 doesn't come back, this will be the last group for the day. So without further ado, Note Taker, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, let me just share my screen. Okay, so I'm Steven. I'm a second year marketing analytics major and minoring in CS. I'll let my other group mates introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Chase. I'm not a coding major, I'm a mechanical engineering major. And I had a lot of fun working on this project with the team.
Hi, I'm Zach. I'm a second year CS major.
I'm Dylan. I'm doing data science and biochemistry, and I'm a second year.
And we created Note Taker, which is a better way to take reading notes, powered by students, built for students. So I guess our like main concept, we kind of like ideated through a bunch of different use cases, but what we kind of went towards was focusing on students first. So basically it would be notes that are directly in your browser as a Chrome extension. So you wouldn't have to switch screens if you want to like take notes or like split your screen, because that could be kind of time consuming and annoying. And then your definitions for whatever like vocab terms you make while reading or like taking notes are always a click away and allow you to read any document without needing other notes or another page open.
And then another idea that we didn't get to actually working on, but we planned for the future, was once you'd created definitions for concepts, you'd be able to go through like our website or Chrome extension and get topic specific flashcard decks, like pre-made just by defining it and taking notes, which we thought would be really helpful for students who want to review and learn more, and it would help them learn better.
Yeah, so then we would want it to be synced across all the browsers so like you can use it in anything. And coming up with collaborating with students we didn't get to either, but that's something that would be interesting if you could use it with people in your class and create like collaborated definition decks. So now I'll show our wireframe. So basically, I hope everyone can see this. So if you're like taking notes, like you're on like an online textbook, say you want to save something as like a definition. So you'd be able to go into it, a pop-up would show up. You can create your definition and then add it to whatever group. If you like, you could create these. And then now, anytime you're reading on the page, you could just go hover over it. It'll tell you to remind you. You could also just go to all your words. It would take you to a website where you could see all the terms and definitions and then switch between your classes that way. So that's just kind of our bare bones like mock-up right there. And then next I'll show we have some static web pages. So this would kind of be like a home page. Some of these pictures are mostly just like placeholders for now, but basically like would show you how it works. You could go directly to the Chrome store if you wanted to go add it to your browser. And then you could go to the library page. So for this, we haven't yet synced up the back end to the front end. So this is kind of just like showing the HTML and CSS of what it would look like once we get like the database synced so that it could produce your terms and definitions. But yeah, that's pretty much how the website works. Present this again.
Yeah, so on the actual coding side of it, once we figured out how to use React to create a responsive sort of page where you can basically type in what you'd like for your title and your definition, and it will actually save it in a local database. Do we have an example of that we can show?
Yeah, I can share my screen if Steven, if you stop.
So it was definitely, it took some time to learn React because we hadn't really used it before. And like learning about the difference between like functions and classes in React and when to use which, we actually had to, we coded it out initially as a function, then we had to switch it all over to a class, but ultimately this is what we were able to come up with. So you can basically type in your title and then it actually saves it, and it's just displaying what it has saved in its database. So if you added more, if you edited that definition, it would also include that. This was basically the basic functionality that we needed. What we wanted to be able to do was using the Chrome extension aspect, actually double click on a word and then be able to have that word auto-populate into the title and have a little note-taking demo sort of card pop up, right? As you saw in like the earlier sort of Figma representations. That turned out to be a problem because Chrome actually doesn't want that sort of capability with Chrome extensions. It wants sort of the only way for you to be able to create a pop-up is by actually clicking on the pop-up icon. So we decided that we could maybe do something that slides from the corner of the screen like we had before. So it wouldn't necessarily be a pop-up that's dependent on sort of the Chrome extension, like clicking on it. But we reached issues there because we were trying to incorporate this code that we have on the screen. There's a little bit more to it, but ultimately it was just basically a React class with a JavaScript file that was in another folder that would like incorporate sort of text that was, I think that was double clicked on the screen. So it just ended up, we weren't able to figure out how to tie together all those different files without sort of having like back end issues. So we spent a couple hours trying to troubleshoot that and ultimately realized that the issue was a little bit more complicated than we currently had the knowledge for. But we still have a somewhat functional, a tool where you can type in information and it saves it to a local database. And then it's just another step to take that database and turn it into like some backend database on a server. And then of course, trying to create that connectivity with like the live web pages you're on. So yeah, that's sort of our React journey.
So we also struggled with file organization. None of us had any prior web development experience, and we didn't realize how important your file organization actually can be in organizing everything and having it run properly. So we ended up finding a lot of information online about how to organize our files. And we used a template for file organization that we found on GitHub. We used GitHub pretty extensively for our own organization and for finding resources. And we ended up making a working file organization that could be built and then added to the Chrome extension like you saw before. But we also struggled a lot with our file organization because we didn't entirely understand every part of it. Like I said, we had no experience before. So changing things in the file, in our main file, became kind of a problem, especially later on, when Dylan said, we were having kind of errors trying to import React files places. And a lot of that we think was due to the file organization and not just the actual code itself. So this is a big struggle point for us. I guess like a next step would be trying to understand our files better and how they're organized, and then modifying them so we can actually import files when we need to.
And so the backend and the database we used was MongoDB. This is an example of what it looks like, I guess, just running. It's really easy to use. You can just run it in the terminal or shell. And we decided to use MongoDB because it's really easy both to use and to set up. And for our purposes, we only really needed like one table that was just like a note that had information in it. Yeah, so that's the database we used. And then for the backend, it had Node. And so the MongoDB connects to a thing with Mongoose. And with the right picture, it's just a quick and simple setup. You connect to a database name using a local, for us, it was a local host, but maybe we can get it set up on AWS or something like that. And then for the actual functionality of the backend, again, it's really simple. You just have a schema and then a model that connects to that schema. And then as you can see, there's not too many things that we've implemented yet, but there are things like find all users or find user by username and just different functions like that. Yeah.
So this is the end of our presentation. First, we'd like to give some thanks. Steve, you're a fantastic mentor. You helped us through a lot of tough challenges. We wouldn't have made it as far as we did without you. So thank you for all of that. And of course, we'd also like to thank the Oasis team for putting this together. I certainly didn't think that I would be working on an app or a Chrome extension this semester, and I wouldn't have been without the organization of Oasis. So thanks for that. And actually, like Steve, you said in the chat, our next step for this project is kind of connecting all of our pieces. We have a lot of the content done, but to continue this, we just need to put it all together. And then it would be running a beta version of the extension. So we ended up pretty close to finishing, but we missed a few steps and we had a few technical difficulties, but we were close at the end. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Note Taker Group. That was awesome. I love seeing kind of all the different moving pieces you have in this project, especially like given the context that like some of you aren't even CS majors in the first place. That's just, it's so impressive, everything that's happening. And I'm very excited to see it actually all come together. Maybe the next few weeks, maybe next semester, who knows, but definitely a very exciting project to watch, and also a really good and useful idea. Definitely for anyone who's like taking Funnies 1, trying to read the textbook and like remember like what's the data definition, what are the design recipe steps, stuff like that. So very excited to see where that project goes. I want to do one last check-in for Project 6 here. Is anyone from Project 6 here ready to present? Do you not want to present, or?
I don't think they were able to make it this late. But anyway, thank you to everyone who presented. Those were some incredible presentations. I know for us on a team and mentors, and hopefully you guys enjoyed it just as well, just to see what you all have been working so hard on for the past 10 weeks or 8 weeks. So great job. Thank you all who had the courage to put that together. So we also want to remind everyone that if you'd like to continue your projects, I know there's a lot of, I think everyone still said they had work that they want excited to do on their project still, are invited to come back in the fall for Oasis. We're hoping to get a large space somewhere in the Corey buildings next fall. And so hopefully we'll all be able to be together in person. So it will be a lot of fun, and we're super looking forward to actually being with you guys in person too. So yeah, one last thing. I was hoping everyone could just put their cameras on so we could take a big group photo. Would be nice to, yeah. So hold on. Okay. Last call for cameras on. I'm gonna take the photo. All right, everyone say Oasis. Oh, 2 pages. Sorry. One more time. 1, 2, 3. Demo day. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Will, do you have anything?
Nope.
All right. Bye, everyone. Stay in touch. We'll see you in the fall. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.